shall never see. A poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast. A tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray.
For a walk in the forest, will you throw us all in jail? For the myth of employment, will you blaze the final trail? For a chance to use your power, will you strike the lethal spark? For a handful of timber, will you take our national park?
For the sake of your empire, will you let them take our trees? And for multinational money, can they do just what they please? For the local country people, will you keep them in the dark?
For a handful of timber, will you take our national park? For a politician's payoff, will you cut the future down? For the history books to witness, will you be the criminal clown? For the end of our forest, will you give the word to start? For a handful of timber, will you take our national park? Save the Daintree National Park.
And she calls strong and loudly, and she calls to me so sweetly. So fearfully.
They're pom-poms. They're like pom-poms but fluffy. Very fluffy. They even look fluffy.
This forest should be a public luxury for all forms of life. It shouldn't just be fancy floorboards in a fancy house for a select few humans. You know, like it's not just about our species, and it's not just about the wealthy elite within our species. It's about all forms of life. It's about the trees, it's about the worms, it's about the fungi, it's about the owls and the possums and the koalas. All of these life forms that are threatened at the moment by just our behaviour. I don't think humans are inherently bad. I just think we have built a system and a culture that rewards bad behaviour. So what we have right now is some very naughty juvenile human beings who are extracting and abusing our ecosystems as opposed to just participating in a reciprocal way with the other forms of life that we share this planet with.
Talking here about 100 or more million years of deep time history. This is a history of evolution that's almost unparalleled, and continuity of occupation. So when we talk about things like we need to harvest wood or we need to use timber products, what we're really talking about is we're willing to disturb and destroy continuous history at that scale.
Open your ears to the song of the forest, the sound of the wind in the leaves.
This is a typical example of what the forests of the mid-north coast have been reduced to, the native forest. The old timers call it the collapse of the saw log industry for over 100 years. All the large trees are gone, no recruitment trees are left to develop hollows for wildlife, There's absolutely minimal area for wildlife. There's no hollows, there's nothing for breeding, nesting, and these forests are now highly flammable because they've been reduced into, in some areas, really tightly packed sticks. We're going to see a lot of these. But this is what they call world's best practice sustainable logging. They just look like sticks, like matchsticks, and the young immature logs are referred to as pulp logs. They're referred to as residue because they say they're good for nothing but pulp, and of course they can then be burnt for forest bioenergy, with those burning them getting subsidies.
So that is like the big thing.
You might need one of the bigger kids.
That's all right, I'll give her
I grew up in forests in Queensland, outside of Brisbane, up in Mount Glorious and Mount Nebo, which has a really beautiful old growth rainforest. We're in Sydney. We've got some friends in this area and we've pretty involved in terms of what they've been through in the last few years, you know, sort of as outsiders have witnessed, you know, the devastation of the forest, of the fires in the forest. We've sort of worked with them with some actions in Sydney around that time. So there's solidarity really. Coming up here to be a part of their little community is an absolute privilege. Always welcome with open arms. Such articulate, intelligent, passionate people. It's something that's quite unique to be able to immerse yourself in that community for a period of time, step away from busy life and business and, you know, the grind that sort of keeps your head out of these really important issues.
Open your ears to the song of the forest, the sound of the wind in the leaves, rushing of water flowing over the stones, every small creature that breathes. Hear the birds sing as they play with the wind, up in the branches so high. Know if we don't change the way that we're living, all of this beauty must die. Open your eyes to the sights of the forest, a cascade of color and form. In every small place that you look around, a new kind of beauty is born. You see the tall trees reaching up to the sky, the seedlings that spring from the earth. You are the ones who now must decide, how much is this really worth? Of the people who have nowhere else they can go. For countless years they have lived in this forest, its rhythms are all that they know. Loggers and miners would drive them away, destroying all in their...
We are residents of Lorne. This is our forest, the Lorne Forest, and we've been inspired by the Bulga protest to come and stage our own protest in the Lorne Forest. And our neighbour Barry up here, about 50 metres up the tree here, he is determined to stop native forest logging along with us. Forests are being degraded. The logging has been going on for years and years. Wildlife there are no more habitat trees left. The waterways are being degraded, and we need to stop. Most of the people in New South Wales are against native forest logging. They'd like to see the forests remain for the wildlife, to draw down carbon for climate change.
The Coalition in general have been very poor managers of natural resources in New South Wales, and we need to change that in the upcoming election if possible in March.
For a walk in the forest, will you throw us all in jail? For the myth of employment, will you blaze the final trail? For a chance to use your power, will you strike the lethal spark? For a handful of timber, will you take our national park?
For the sake of your empire, will you let them take our trees? And for multinational money, can they do just what they please? For the local country
We have a
people,
history of political
will you keep
interference
them
in the
the
timber
dark?
industry and
For a handful of timber,
making
will you take our national
timber resources
park?
available to industry has been corrupted by politics. So when I started as a forester, it was about protecting forests and trying to conserve forests so that they weren't cleared for agriculture. Concepts of sustainability really were about whole of forest productivity and multi-use. But what we've done now and what we've implemented, of course, is industrial forestry at an almost blanket scale, and industrial forestry that is completely nested with industry. And we have a forestry corporation, our New South Wales organisation that manages the forests, apparently or supposedly on behalf of the community, is now an independent corporation and acts autonomously and makes up its own rules. And so what we see is this industrialised logging process, this timber extraction process, being magnified and intensified, and we no longer have an agency that's a public service. It's actually a corporation.
What do we want? Climate action! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate action! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate action! Now! We want it! We want it!
It's up there on the mountain, it's running down the streams. It's hiding in a sacred place, it's underneath your feet. Gold is on the mountain, it's running through her veins. Gold is in the mountain, not for man's wealth or gain. Our ancient Mother Earth, she hangs her head and cries. They want to mine her blood, she asks the question why. Why do you want this gold? What does it mean to you? The legacy of what you live is not what you should do. And gold is in the mountain, it's running through her veins. Gold is in the mountain, not for man's wealth or gain. Green and black, they unite to help our Mother Earth. To stop those miners with the greed from digging in her dirt. Green and black, they won't be stopped, they'll fight until the end. Till the mountain stands tall and strong and sacred sites remain.
we're just making the bunting from the prints that the children made from the leaves of the forest around them today.
We had a major campaign in this region to protect another part of Bulga State Forest and to try and save amazing, beautiful old growth trees. I'd never seen anything like them. I came to the area 30 years ago. I got shocked that trees like that were being cut down. I got involved and I've worked for the forest ever since. She grabbed me, she reached out and said, "You're coming to work for me." And in one way or another, that's what I've done, because I just can't believe, and I couldn't believe then, that you know, these amazing beings that are so old and that get so old, that get to be hundreds and hundreds of years old, and we are, well, not we, but you know, the government's forestry agency and the forestry and the logging industry are trying to keep all these trees at 10 years and 20 years and 30 years when they should be 300 and 405 years, 500 years if they're left to grow old in peace. And so we've got this crazy industry that makes a loss, and financially, you know, it runs at a loss, and as well as that, it damages all those values. You know, it damages the catchments, and the logging damages the carbon, and it's driving animals that are unique and amazing to extinction.
To survive. Deep roots, that's what we need. Deep roots, from the forest to the sea. Razas profundas, necesitamos razas profundas in every part of our life.
The young woman today who sat on the tripod and who held up the logging machinery for about 7 or 8 hours was, she was 21, and she was there because she spent some of her childhood in this area, and she understands the beauty of the area, and that the forests give you secret swimming holes and cascades and beautiful places to walk and amazing special experiences, and that if you want those special experiences, you've got to go into nature to find them. That's where they are, and to do that we have to protect those special places. So I'd say to young people, get out there, get involved, be prepared, be brave, be bold, be courageous, because now's a good time, and yeah, you know, it's their future, it's your future to stand up for your future, because it's pretty clear no one else is going to do it for you, and certainly not with the same passion that you can bring to it.
Good morning, Mark.
Well, the reason I'm here is I've been living in the area since 1980. I was been teaching here, school principal in a variety of different schools around here, including Elands. But I've been also closely involved in conserving land in a conservation group that has preserved approximately 1,600 acres of land. And during the 2019 fires, it was all burnt, all disappeared. It was devastating. The large hollow trees that are habitat that are hundreds of years old have gone, went up like Roman candles. The regrowth that's coming through certainly is prolific, but it's dense and it's just, and it is as it says, it's regrowth. So there's young trees growing, within metres of each other. So any new trees coming up to become a large forest giant are going to struggle for many, many years. If another fire comes through, that regrowth is just going to burn. The regrowth doesn't really support much carbon storage like the old trees. This battle had been going on for since the 90s. I'm particularly chuffed to see that the children are now taking over. And especially, a lot of these children here running the show are children that I taught, and now they're in their 40s, and it's just really... Yeah, I just wish they didn't have to do this.
Rushing of water flowing over the stones, every small creature that breathes. Hear the birds sing as they play with the wind, up in the branches so high. No, if we don't change the way that we're living, all of this beauty must die. Open your eyes and God forgive the policeman who keeps us on our knees with guns the merchant pays for, while killing of the trees. And all across the heavens, across the star-filled seas, the universe shall judge them for killing of the trees, for killing of the trees. Though the battle still goes on, the nightcap park is safely won. Prophecies who one day learn to read, just watch your soul. We got everybody together. Politicians everywhere, listen and become aware. Nothing now can interfere.
50, 100.
With the power of the trees.
Well, I've been defending forests for 45 years now, since I started at Tarania Creek, and I still feel just as strongly as ever. And the situation is getting worse all the time, so I don't really have a choice except to keep on going. And particularly in this situation where the state government is not in control of the EPA and the EPA is not in control of state forests. And they're all just treating this as a resource instead of homes for millions of animals. So I think it's at the stage now where we can't just let a koala catastrophe occur in front of us without doing something about it. So that's why I'm here.
Though the battle still goes on, the nightcap park is safely won. Prophecies who one day learn to read, just watch your soul. Politicians everywhere, listen and become aware. Nothing now can interfere with
These robotic monsters can cut a tree, strip it of its branches and cut off all its crown in a matter of minutes. What was once key koala habitat, home to many endangered species throughout hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, nay, millions of years of evolution, suddenly turned into a trashed forest, all in a matter of hours.
May God forgive their madness, their violence and their greed. Their children not despise them for killing of the trees. And God forgive the policeman who keeps us on our knees. With guns the merchant pays for while killing of the trees.
Let me introduce you to Cape Byron Power.
For the sake of your empire, will you let them take our trees? And for multinational money, can they do just what they please? For the local country people, will you keep them in the dark?
For a handful of timber, will you take our national park? For a politician's payoff, will you cut the future down?
I'm sitting here in a swamp on the edge of this big, huge mounds of wood chip, which once were native forest of northern New South Wales. Key koala habitat and habitat to other species that are trying to recover from the bushfires that swept across Australia. I'm seeing truck after truck arrive with whole logs. There were big logs that I saw just half an hour ago, that about that diameter on the truck, and there were dozens of them there in these two bogies that were brought onto this dump site here, where they're basically wood chipped.
This wood chipping plant at Broadwater uses a huge amount of fossil fuel diesel to operate 24/7. And this before the wood chip even reaches its furnaces on this long conveyor belt. Imagine the fossil fuel footprint that is poured out into the atmosphere from the exhausts of these big diesel-driven timber monsters, which take whole logs or wood chip logs hundreds of kilometres away to Cape Byron Power's plants. Burning biomass to provide electricity is still burning and emitting carbon. You can't get around it.
They want to mine her blood. She asks the question why.
connect the dots between the trees, what we're doing to our forests, and the burning of our forests for electricity, when there's so many non-destructive ways of our carbon capture, which is our forest, to sequester, to save us from climate change. So, you know, the burning is the issue, right? It is burning of our planet. That's what's going on.
There's now been a huge push for biofuels. And the whole idea is that we cut native forests and then we burn them for energy. Now we need to remember what trees are. Trees are largely carbon. So when we burn trees, we're going to be producing emissions. And it's the lowest value, highest volume use of a forest. And it's a crazy thing to be doing. We need to be using these forests for the maximum value for the taxpayer who owns these forests. And the maximum value, the best and highest value from these forests is for carbon storage, for water production, and for tourism.
You are the ones who now must decide how much is this really worth.
Our entire East Coast population depends on the tiny amount of forests, the thin green line of forests that is down the Great Dividing Range. And you know, I say to everyone, go on Google Earth, have a look at Australia, and have a look at the really, really dark green. There's just this tiny thin line of dark green down the east coast of Australia. They're the remaining tall forests. There's a tiny bit in southwest WA with the same problems that we have, or at least the government there has said logging will end next year. And that's all there is. And there's no, like, you can go west from our forests and you don't get to any more forests until you get to Madagascar, and their forests are in trouble. And, you know, you can go east and you don't really get to any more forests either until you get to somewhere in South America, and their forests are in trouble too. So it's a global problem, what is happening to our forests. And if we can't do something about it in a relatively wealthy nation with a relatively well-educated population of people who can afford to care, then it's asking too much for people in other countries to be able to, you know, people are being shot and, you know, murdered for standing up and protecting forests in the Amazon.
And she calls strong and loudly, and she calls to me so sweetly, but my modern mind answers fearfully, so fearfully, so fearfully. 'Cause they're logging old-growth forests, polluting the oceans, they're drying up our rivers and our streams, and they're building up our beaches, killing off endangered species. And I wonder what our legacy will be. What will it be? What will it be? But still she calls to me gently, she calls to me greatly, she calls deep and softly, and she calls strong and loudly, and she calls to me so sweetly, but my modern mind